So you joined the Red Sox in '83. They were a mid-table club your first few seasons, and then suddenly, as you mentioned, 1986 happens. They win the East, end up losing that gut-wrenching World Series to the Mets. And of course, in the World Series, you're up 3-2 going back to Shea Stadium. You're ahead 5-3 with 2 outs in the bottom of the 10th inning, and it all slips away. You were actually in the clubhouse waiting to interview the world champion Red Sox as this collapse happens. What did you see? What did you hear?
Well, I actually did the top of the 10th inning where Ken did 8 to 9. I did, I think, 3, 4, and 7. Ken did 9, 8 and 9. So in the top of the 10th, I'm doing the inning. Henderson homers off the Newsday sign and left at Shea, and then Barrett doubled, or Boggs doubled, Barrett single, a moment 2-run lead. So in the commercial break, I said to Ken, well, do you want me to go down for the clubhouse celebration in the post game, or do you want me to finish the 10th inning? And Ken said, well, it's strictly up to you. And I thought, well, he's been here 20 years. He should call the last out of the first Red Sox World Championship since 1918, and the first one ever broadcast. And besides, I want to be down there and get soaked in champagne and really be part of the celebration. So I went. I started to run down the ramps at Shea, because Shea Stadium was an archaic, awful facility, terrible elevator service. Couldn't wait for that. You'd be waiting a week. So I ran down. By the time I got down, there were 2 out and nobody on. I watched the champagne being brought into the clubhouse. I watched Mrs. Yawkey being ushered into the clubhouse. Saw the lockers all wrapped in the protective cellophane. And then there was a delay, and finally I found a security guard with a radio, and I heard Bob Murphy hit base hit by Carter, the base hit by Mitchell, then the Ray Knight hit that made it a 1-run game, and all of a sudden, with Mookie Wilson batting, I hear Bob Murphy say, "Gets away, and here comes the tying run." And that, of course, was the wild pitch or pass ball. We scored a wild pitch, but it could have been either. It tied the game. So at that point, I see them start to bring the champagne out of the clubhouse, and I realize, hey, I better get up to the booth for the 11th inning. So I start to run up the ramps at Shea Stadium, which is outside the perimeter of the playing field. And at that point, I heard the crowd, I heard the roar. I didn't know what happened, but I knew the Red Sox had lost, the Mets had won. And it really wasn't until I got back to the hotel, the Grand Hyatt in Midtown Manhattan, about 2 in the morning, that I saw on SportsCenter the ball go through Buckner's legs.
Did you fly back to Boston with the team after they lost Game 7?
I did. And Game 7 got rained out on a Sunday night. I remember with our bullpen coach, Joe Morgan, later our manager, to Rusty stops for dinner with our wives. And then Game 7, the Red Sox had a 3-0 lead. Evans had given in home runs, and things were looking pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll never forget, in the 6th inning, I'm doing the play-by-play, the Red Sox are up 3-1. Bruce Hurst is pitching, who had already been dubbed the MVP according to Shea Stadium scoreboard in Game 6 before the roof fell in. And anyway, the bases are loaded, Keith Hernandez is up, and I said to myself, as I'm doing the play-by-play, if he gets a hit, they win. If Hurst gets him out, we win. And he lined a 2-run single that tied the game. And of course, the Mets broke it open, especially in the 8th inning when Strawberry hit one on the scoreboard. And anyway, they win. But I remember the trip back to, of course, it's a very short bus ride to LaGuardia, but I remember the solemnness on the plane. I sat with Dave Sachs, brother Steve Sachs, who was a backup catcher, not on the roster, but there is backup insurance for the World Series, and it was just so eerie to land like that. 2 days later, they had a parade, and it was an appreciation. Of course, it was ready to be a victory parade, but still we had 500,000 people turn out. And after the parade ended back at Fenway, I went into John McNamara's office, and I said to the manager, well, great season, it's too bad it didn't happen. He was absolutely distraught. He said, why me? Why me? I go to church every Sunday. I try to live right. Why did this happen to me? And I don't think he ever got over it, losing that World Series. It was very, very sad. To me, it was my 4th year. I said, well, this is a really good team. We're going to be back again. You know, it's not that the end of the world. It was a big deal, but it wasn't the end of the world. Little did I know we wouldn't get back to the World Series for 18 years.
Yeah. I've seen Bill Buckner's interview after Game 6, after the ball went through his legs, and he seemed pretty even-keeled about it at the time. And you've said that he got a standing ovation at that parade a couple days later. When do you think it dawned on him that he was going to be remembered for this error as the guy, the scapegoat, that everyone was going to blame for this loss?
I think it's one of the most unfair things that I've ever seen in sports. I don't know when it dawned on him, maybe when off-season in New England, when people would make comments at restaurants or supermarkets or in the streets to him personally, maybe that's when it set in. But to me, it was totally unfair because the game was tied.
Right.
It did not cost us the lead. There's no guarantee the Red Sox would have won it. The biggest play was the wild pitcher pass ball. And really, to me, the biggest decision was to start the inning with Calvin Schiraldi. Bob Stanley should have started the inning. He was throwing the ball great at the time. And I think if he had started the inning, because Schiraldi had already pitched 2 innings, I think the Red Sox probably would have had a better result. But I think it's one of the most unfair things I've ever seen, and I don't think Billy Bucks deserved it at all. He probably shouldn't have been out there. He was hurting. He had the bad ankles, and but he was, and you know he had a rough time with it. He actually left for New England, moved on to Idaho, but he's been welcomed back. And this past summer, he worked as the manager of the Brockton Rockton Independent League club in the Atlantic League.
Yeah, I know he avoided coming back to Fenway for a long time until after they finally won the World Series. Did you keep in contact with him at all in those intermediate years?
Well, we did see him when he was a hitting coach for the White Sox. He'd come back.
Okay.
I mean, I didn't really have everyday or call him, but we did see him around baseball. He was still around the game, so it wasn't like he avoided Fenway at all costs. I mean, his travels took him there, and I think it's good we moved on from that. And of course, 04 eased a lot of pain.